She heard some footsteps coming closer behind her, but more clearly this time. She quickly turned around, and in that moment, the flashes of lightning revealed two big men wearing masks coming towards her. Fortune became terrified, her heart pounding faster in her chest. Fortune quickly ran, while the two big men ran after her, but the alcohol she had drunk earlier made it hard for her to be fast. She couldn't see clearly and tripped over a dustbin. It was very dark at night, and there was heavy rain falling. Sometimes thunder and lightning lit up the alley, and the ground was completely flooded from all the rain. Fortune had just left the club after hanging out with her friends, Vivian and Amar. They wanted her to stay longer, but she said no because her boyfriend was waiting for her at the end of the alley, and she didn't want to make him wait any longer. As Fortune walked down the alley, her entire body was soaked from the rain. She could see her boyfriend's car parked at the end of the alley. It was very dark, but the lightning kept showing her the way. As she carefully walked down the alley, she heard some footsteps behind her. Fortune quickly turned around, but she saw no one. "Who's there?" she asked, but no one answered. She felt her mind was playing tricks on her because she had drunk too much. She pushed the thought away and kept staggering down the street. Once again, she heard some footsteps coming closer behind her, but more clearly this time. She quickly turned around, and in that moment, the flashes of lightning revealed two big men wearing masks coming towards her. Fortune became terrified, her heart pounding faster in her chest. Fortune quickly ran, while the two big men ran after her, but the alcohol she had drunk earlier made it hard for her to be fast. She couldn't see clearly and tripped over a dustbin. The two big men caught up to her and grabbed her, leaving her handbag and phone behind. She tried to scream, but one of them stuffed a piece of cloth inside her mouth. She kicked and scratched, but she was no match for the big men. One of them hit her hard on the head, knocking her unconscious. Mark's car stayed at the end of the alley while they took Fortune away in their van. They drove to a bridge and tried to push her over. Fortune was barely awake at this time, but she fought to survive. As she struggled with the big men, she pulled off one of their masks and recognized him right away. But she couldn't say a word because her mouth was stuffed. The big men tied her legs and hands behind her back as they got ready to throw her into the river. On the shore, there stood a fisherman called Matthew who came to check his nets for fish. He stood and watched as Fortune struggled to break free until they finally threw her into the river. Matthew waited until they drove off, then he jumped into the river to get her. After looking for a while, he was lucky to find her. He grabbed her waist and gently pulled her to shore. She was unconscious, so he started giving her CPR, pumping her chest slowly and forcing air into her lungs with his mouth. After some minutes, Fortune coughed and spit out some water. She looked at Matthew's face and went unconscious again. Matthew quickly put her in his truck and drove her to the nearest hospital in his village. The doctor checked her and told Matthew that she would be fine, but Matthew refused to leave. He stayed behind and watched over Fortune, scared that the big men would come looking for her. Back at the alley, Mark waited in his car for some minutes. He called Fortune's phone, but she didn't pick up. It rang loudly in the alley, with no one to pick it up. Mark drove away angrily, believing that Fortune had deliberately stood him up. When Mark got home, he met Amara, Fortune's best friend, in his house waiting for him. "I am tired of putting up with your friend's madness," Mark said, and kissed Amara. She kissed him as well, and he carried her into his bedroom. "What if she has found out?" Mark asked, afraid. "Don't worry, I promise you she doesn't suspect a thing. All we need is her inheritance, so you have to put up with her for us. Just get married to her, so you'd be in control of her empire. Then you can do whatever you wish with her," Amara told him. Mark nodded and kissed Amara again, covering themselves with a bedsheet. While the two big thugs drove away from the bridge where they had thrown Fortune, one of them asked, "It was clear she recognized you. Wouldn't that be a problem?" The other thug replied, "You have nothing to worry about. Dead men tell no tales." They drove for a while and arrived at a very big mansion. When they got inside, they met a woman in her late 50s. She was sitting in the living room, waiting for their report. "Is she dead?" the woman asked. "It has been taken care of," one of the thugs told her. "Any witnesses?" she asked again. The two thugs looked at each other and replied, "None. It was a quiet area." The woman let out an evil laughter and threw 2 bundles of cash to the thugs. "Very good. Now go back to your posts," she said. The thugs picked up the money, thanked her, and left the living room. Their names were David and Daniel. "Why do you think she'd want to kill her stepdaughter?" David asked. "I don't know. The rich are weird. As long as we get paid, we shouldn't care," Daniel answered. But David was heartbroken. He really liked Fortune, and he felt even worse knowing that Fortune had recognized him before they threw her into the river. In the small village where Fortune was getting treated, she suddenly woke up, struggling and kicking on the bed. Matthew, who sat beside her, quickly calmed her down. "Relax, relax, you're safe now, I promise," Matthew said in a soft voice. Slowly, Fortune calmed down and drifted off into sleep again. While she slept, she mumbled some words. "Mum, please don't leave." "Mum, no, no." Matthew looked at her innocent but troubled face and found himself being attracted to her. Fortune had the right curves at the right places. She looked exactly like her mother, who died in a car crash a few years ago. And the words she said in her dreams reminded Matthew of himself when his mother left them. He would call her in his sleep, begging her not to leave. The doctor came into her room a few minutes later and checked her. As he touched her wrists to feel her pulse, she woke up. "Where am I?" she asked. "You're in the hospital," the doctor answered. "What happened? Why am I here? Where is my mother?" Fortune asked in panic. Matthew, who had been standing and watching them, suddenly asked her, "What is your name?" Fortune stayed quiet. "I don't know," she answered, confused. The doctor asked her to rest, then he took Matthew to his office. "I'm afraid she's suffering from memory loss. It's very possible, especially when someone almost drowned," the doctor explained. Matthew was confused. He didn't know what to do. He said to the doctor, "But doctor, I barely know her. I just saved her from drowning in the river. There are no clues to find out who she is." The doctor said to Matthew, "I suggest you take her home and give her all the love and care that you can. With time, she would get her memories back," the doctor told him. Matthew felt confused as he walked back to the hospital room where Fortune lay sleeping peacefully. He kept staring at her, different thoughts running through his mind. Should he call the police? Maybe they could help find out who she is and bring her back to her family. They must be worried sick, he thought. But then another thought hit him. Looking at the dangerous situation he'd saved her from, calling the police might not be the safest thing for her. What if those men came looking for her? What if they had connections in the police force? The questions swirled in his mind like the river currents that had almost taken her life. He made his decision. He would take her home, care for her until she got her memory back, and keep her safe from whoever had tried to end her life. When Fortune was released from the hospital, Matthew took her to his small home in the village. The house was simple but clean. He had built most of the furniture by himself. Fortune looked around, confused. She couldn't remember anything. She didn't know who she was or where she came from. Matthew watched as she walked around the room, touching things as if trying to remember something. Her eyes were full of fear and confusion. He felt sorry for her. She was completely alone in the world, with no memory of her past. "You can stay here," Matthew said gently, "until you remember who you are." Fortune turned to look at him, her eyes filling with tears. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't know what I would have done without you." Matthew showed Fortune to a small room. "This will be your room," he said. "I'll sleep in the living room." "I can't take your room," Fortune said. "It's fine," Matthew told her. "You need to rest and get better. I'll be fine in the living room." Fortune nodded, grateful. She was tired, both in body and mind. Matthew left her to rest and went to the living room. He sat on the couch, thinking about the strange things that had happened. A few hours ago, he had been checking his fishing nets. Now he had a mysterious woman living in his house, a woman who had almost been killed and had no memory of who she was. He wondered who she was and who had tried to kill her. Why would anyone want to harm such a beautiful and innocent woman? He had so many questions, but no answers. The next morning, Fortune woke up to the smell of food cooking. She got up and walked to the kitchen where she found Matthew making breakfast. "Good morning," Matthew greeted her with a warm smile. "How are you feeling?" "Better, thank you," Fortune replied. "What are you making?" "Just some simple breakfast," Matthew said. "I hope you like it." They sat down to eat together. Fortune was quiet, still trying to make sense of everything. Matthew tried to talk, but he could see she was struggling with her memory loss. "Don't worry," Matthew said gently. "Your memory will come back in time. Until then, you're safe here with me." Fortune smiled weakly. "Thank you, Matthew. I don't know what I would do without you." As the days passed, Fortune slowly began to get used to life in the village. Matthew took her fishing with him, hoping that the fresh air and work would help her get better. She learned quickly, picking up the skills needed to help with the fishing business. The village people were curious about the new woman living with Matthew. They whispered among themselves, wondering who she was and where she had come from. Matthew avoided their questions, protecting Fortune's privacy. One day, while they were out fishing, Fortune suddenly stopped and stared at the river. "I remember something," she said softly. "Water. I remember being in the water. I was drowning." Matthew turned to her, worried. "What else do you remember?" "Nothing," Fortune said, frustrated. "Just that I was drowning. And then nothing." "It's okay," Matthew told her. "Your memory is coming back slowly. That's a good sign." As they kept fishing, Fortune found herself watching Matthew. He was kind and patient with her, always looking out for her. She felt safe with him, and she was grateful for him being in her life. But Fortune wasn't the only one having feelings. Matthew found himself more and more attracted to Fortune. She was beautiful, smart, and despite her memory loss, she had a kind and gentle spirit. He tried to push these feelings away, reminding himself that she might have a family, or even a husband waiting for her. One evening, as they sat outside watching the sunset, Fortune turned to Matthew. "Matthew, can I ask you something?" "Of course," Matthew replied. "Why are you being so kind to me? You don't even know who I am." Matthew was quiet for a moment. "When I was young, my mother left our village. She left me and my father without a word. My father raised me alone, and he taught me to always help people in need, no matter who they are. When I saw you in that river, fighting for your life, I couldn't just stand by and do nothing." "I'm sorry about your mother," Fortune said softly. "That must have been very hard for you." "It was," Matthew admitted, "but my father was a good man. He taught me everything I know. He died a few years ago, and I miss him every day." Fortune reached out and touched Matthew's hand. "Thank you for sharing that with me, and thank you for saving me." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun go down below the horizon. In that moment, both of them felt a connection that went beyond words. However, their peaceful life was about to be broken. Matthew had been engaged to a local girl named Olana before his father's death. Olana was the daughter of a big family in the village, and the engagement had been arranged by Matthew's father. Matthew had never loved Olana, but he had agreed to the engagement out of respect for his father's wishes. Olana had heard rumors about the mysterious woman living with Matthew, and she was angry. She came to Matthew's house one day, determined to face him. "Matthew," Olana called out as she came near the house, "we need to talk." Matthew came out of the house, followed by Fortune. When Olana saw Fortune, her face twisted with anger. "Who is this woman?" Olana demanded. "Why is she living in your house?" "This is Fortune," Matthew explained calmly. "I rescued her from the river. She has lost her memory, and I'm helping her until she gets better." "And you expect me to believe that?" Olana said. "Everyone in the village is talking about you two. How do you think that makes me feel? We're supposed to be getting married." "Olana, I understand how you feel," Matthew said. "But Fortune needs help. I couldn't just leave her to take care of herself." "Then send her away," Olana said. "Send her to the city, to a hospital. Anywhere but here with you." Fortune, who had been quietly listening, stepped forward. "I'll leave," she said softly. "I don't want to cause any problems." "No," Matthew said firmly. "You're staying here. Olana, I'm sorry, but I can't turn my back on someone in need." Olana glared at them both before storming off. "You'll regret this, Matthew," she shouted over her shoulder. After Olana left, Fortune turned to Matthew with tears in her eyes. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to cause problems between you and your fiancé." "You didn't cause anything," Matthew told her. "Olana and our engagement was arranged by our parents. I never loved her and she never loved me. We were just following tradition." "But still," Fortune said, "I feel terrible about this." "Don't," Matthew said, taking her hand. "You have nothing to feel terrible about. Days passed, and the tension in the village kept growing. Olana and her family were spreading rumors about Matthew and Fortune, trying to pressure him into sending Fortune away. But Matthew refused to back down. He had promised to help Fortune, and he meant to keep it. One afternoon, while Matthew was at the market selling fish, Fortune decided to do some cleaning around the house. As she was cleaning, she found an old photo album. Curious, she opened it and started looking through the pictures. They were photos of Matthew as a child, with a man who she thought was his father. There were also some photos of a woman who looked familiar. Fortune stared at the woman's photo for a long time, trying to figure out why she looked familiar. Suddenly, her head began to hurt. Images flashed through her mind: a big house, a kind man's face, a woman laughing. She held her head, trying to make sense of the memories that were coming back. When Matthew came back home, he found Fortune sitting on the floor, surrounded by the photos, tears running down her face. "Fortune," Matthew rushed to her side. "What's wrong? Are you okay?" "I remember something," Fortune said through her tears. "I saw a photo of a woman in your album, and it brought something back. I remember a big house and a man. I think he's my father." Matthew's heart sank. He knew this day would come, the day when Fortune would start remembering her past. And when she fully got her memory back, she would probably leave and go back to her old life. "That's good," Matthew said, trying to hide his sadness. "Your memory is coming back." Over the next few days, Fortune kept having flashes of memory. She remembered bits and pieces of her life: a big fancy house, expensive cars, parties. She realized she must have come from a wealthy family. But there was something else, something dark hiding in her memories that she couldn't quite understand. Meanwhile, back in the city, the search for Fortune had grown bigger. Mr. Okoye, her father, was beside himself with grief. He had hired private investigators and offered a large reward for any information about his daughter's whereabouts. But despite their efforts, there were no leads. Fortune had seemingly disappeared without a trace. Mark, Fortune's boyfriend, kept playing the role of the grieving partner. He gave interviews to the local media, begging for anyone with information to come forward. But behind closed doors, he was counting down the days until Fortune would be declared legally dead, allowing him to claim her inheritance. Bianca, Fortune's stepmother, was also putting on a show of grief. She organized prayer sessions and comforted Mr. Okoye, all while secretly celebrating the success of her plan. With Fortune out of the way, her son Oscar would inherit everything. She had worked too hard and come too far to let Mr. Okoye's daughter from his first marriage stand in the way of her goals. However, David, one of the thugs who had attacked Fortune, was suffering from guilt. He couldn't stop thinking about Fortune's face, as she recognized him before they threw her into the river. The guilt was eating him alive, and he started drinking heavily to numb the pain. One night, while David was drunk, he went back to the bridge where they had thrown Fortune. He stood there, staring into the dark water, wondering if there was any way to make up for what he'd done. He knew he could never bring himself to confess. Bianca would kill him if she found out. But the guilt was too much to bear. Back in the village, tension kept growing. Olana was becoming more and more aggressive, spreading bad rumors about Fortune and pressuring her family and the village elders to step in. One day, while Fortune was walking to the market to buy some vegetables, Olana met her on the road. She was carrying a large stick in her hand. "You," Olana shouted. "You're the one who's ruining everything." "Olana, please," Fortune said, trying to stay calm. "I don't want any trouble." "Well, you've got trouble," Olana screamed. Before Fortune could react, Olana raised the stick and hit her on the head. Fortune fell to the ground, blood running from her wound. Some villagers who saw the attack rushed to help her, while others held Olana back. Matthew, who had heard the noise, came running. When he saw Fortune lying on the ground, bleeding, his heart stopped. He quickly picked her up and rushed her to the hospital. The doctor checked Fortune and stitched up her wound. "She'll be fine," the doctor told Matthew. "But she needs rest." That was quite a hard blow to the head. Matthew sat by Fortune's bedside, holding her hand. He was angry with Olana, but more than that, he was worried about Fortune. What if the blow to her head had caused more damage? After a few hours, Fortune began to wake up. She opened her eyes and looked around, confused. When she saw Matthew, she smiled weakly. "Matthew," she said, "who are you?" Matthew's heart sank. Had the blow to her head erased her memories again? "It's me, Matthew," he said gently. "Don't you remember me?" Fortune stared at him blankly for a moment, then suddenly burst out laughing. "I'm just teasing you. Of course I remember you." Matthew let out a sigh of relief. "Don't scare me like that," he said, but he couldn't help smiling. Fortune's face turned serious. "Matthew, I need to tell you something. When Olana hit me, it brought back more memories. I remember more now. I remember my name is Fortune. I remember my father. And I remember the night I was attacked." "Do you remember who attacked you?" Matthew asked. "Yes," Fortune said. "There were two men. One of them was David. I recognized him when his mask came off. He works for my stepmother, Bianca." "Your stepmother tried to have you killed?" Matthew was shocked. "Yes," Fortune said, "but I don't know why. I need to go home. I need to see my father and find out what's going on." Matthew nodded. "We'll go together. I'll help you." But Fortune shook her head. "Matthew, there's something else I need to tell you. Before we go back to the city, I need you to know how I feel about you." Matthew's heart began to race. "What do you mean?" "I love you, Matthew," Fortune said, looking directly into his eyes. "I know I come from a different world. I know I probably have a life waiting for me in the city, but I've fallen in love with you. You saved my life. You took care of me when I had no one, and you've been nothing but kind and patient with me. I love you." Matthew was speechless. He had been trying to hold back his feelings for Fortune, knowing that she would leave eventually. But now, hearing her say it, he couldn't hold back anymore. "I love you too, Fortune," he said. "I've been in love with you from the moment I pulled you out of that river." They kissed, and for a moment, all their worries and fears melted away. They were just two people who had found love in the most unlikely place. But reality soon came back. Fortune had to go back to her father and face her stepmother. She had to find out why Bianca had tried to kill her. After Fortune was released from the hospital, they went back to Matthew's house to get ready for their journey to the city. As they were packing, Matthew suddenly remembered something. "Fortune, there's something I need to tell you," Matthew said carefully, "something about your father." "What is it?" Fortune asked. "My father, he died a few years ago. He was your father's business partner. Shortly before he died, your father sent him some snacks as a birthday gift. They were his favorite snacks. After he ate them, he became very sick and died within days." Fortune's face went pale. "Are you saying my father poisoned your father?" "I don't know," Matthew said, "but I've always believed that your father was responsible for my father's death. I swore to get revenge, but now I don't know what to think." Fortune shook her head. "Matthew, my father would never do that. He's the kindest, most honest man I know. There must be another explanation." "What other explanation could there be?" Matthew asked. Fortune thought for a moment. "Bianca, what if she was the one who sent the snacks? What if she pretended they were from my father?" "But why would she do that?" Matthew asked. "I don't know," Fortune admitted. "But think about it. Your father was my father's business partner. Maybe he found out something about Bianca, something she didn't want anyone to know. So she killed him to keep him quiet." Matthew thought about this. It made sense. His father had been working on some financial papers for Mr. Okoye's company shortly before his death. What if he had found proof of Bianca's crimes? "There's something else," Fortune said. "My mother died in a car accident about a year after Bianca married my father. At the time, we all thought it was just a tragic accident. But now I'm beginning to wonder if Bianca had something to do with that as well." The pieces were starting to come together. Bianca had married Mr. Okoye for his money. When Fortune's mother was alive, she stood in the way of Bianca's plans. So Bianca had her killed. Then, when Matthew's father found out what Bianca was up to, she had him killed too. And finally, when Fortune threatened Bianca's control over the family fortune, Bianca tried to have her killed as well. "We need to expose her," Matthew said. "We need to make her pay for what she's done." "But we need proof," Fortune pointed out. "Right now, it's just our theory. We need evidence." "Then we'll find evidence," Matthew said firmly. "We'll go to the city and we'll find a way to expose Bianca for what she really is." Before they left the village, Fortune wanted to deal with the situation with Olana. She went to Olana's house and knocked on the door. When Olana opened the door and saw Fortune, her face turned red with shame and anger. "What do you want?" Olana asked coldly. "I just wanted you to know that Matthew and I are leaving the village," Fortune said calmly. "I'm sorry for any pain I've caused you. That was never what I wanted." "You're sorry," Olana said. "You took Matthew away from me. You ruined my life." "Matthew was never yours to lose," Fortune said gently. "He never loved you, Olana. The engagement was arranged by your parents and his father. It wasn't based on love." "Get out," Olana screamed. "Get out of my sight." Fortune left quietly, knowing there was nothing more she could say. Some wounds take time to heal, and Olana would need time to accept the situation. Fortune and Matthew set off for the city. The journey took several hours, and as they got closer, Fortune felt her worry growing. She was about to face the woman who had tried to kill her. She was about to face her old life, her father, and possibly her boyfriend. But Fortune was also nervous about something else. She wondered if Matthew would still love her once he saw her old life. She came from a world of wealth and privilege. Would Matthew feel out of place? Would he still want to be with her? As if reading her mind, Matthew reached over and took her hand. "Whatever happens," he said, "we're in this together." Fortune smiled and squeezed his hand. "Together," she agreed. When they arrived at the city, Fortune was struck by how different it felt from the village. The tall buildings, the busy streets, the noise, it was overwhelming. But it also felt familiar. This was her home. "Before we go to my father," Fortune said, "there's something I need to do." "What?" Matthew asked. "I need to see my boyfriend, Mark," Fortune said. "I need to know if he was worried about me. I need to know if what I suspect about him is true." Matthew nodded, though he felt a pang of jealousy at the mention of Fortune's boyfriend. They drove to Mark's apartment. Fortune still had a spare key that she usually kept hidden outside the apartment. She got it and quietly opened the door, signaling for Matthew to follow her. What they saw inside confirmed Fortune's worst suspicions. Mark and Amara, her best friend, were in bed together. They were so focused on each other that they didn't notice Fortune and Matthew standing in the doorway. Fortune watched them for a moment, then quietly closed the door. She turned to Matthew with a strange look on her face, part hurt, part relief. "Are you okay?" Matthew asked, worried. "I'm fine," Fortune said. "Actually, I'm more than fine. I'm glad I saw that. It confirms what I've been feeling. I don't love Mark. Maybe I never did. He was just convenient. But you, Matthew, you're real. What we have is real." Matthew pulled her into his arms and kissed her. "I love you," he whispered. "I love you too," Fortune replied. They left Mark's apartment and headed to Mr. Okoye's company. Fortune knew her father would be there. He practically lived at his office these days, throwing himself into his work to distract himself from his grief. When they arrived at the company, the receptionist's jaw dropped when she saw Fortune. "Miss Fortune," she gasped. "Is that really you?" "Yes, it's me," Fortune said with a smile. "Is my father in his office?" "Yes, but—" Before the receptionist could finish, Fortune was already heading towards the elevator, with Matthew close behind. As they walked through the office, all the workers stopped what they were doing and stared. They couldn't believe their eyes. Fortune Okoye, who everyone thought was dead, was walking through the office as if she had never been gone. When Fortune reached her father's office, she could hear him on the phone. He was talking to someone about organizing a memorial service. Fortune's heart broke. Her poor father had been planning her funeral. She opened the door without knocking. Mr. Okoye looked up, and when he saw his daughter standing in the doorway, the phone slipped from his hands and fell to the floor. "Fortune," he whispered, his voice breaking, "is it really you?" "Yes, father," Fortune said, tears running down her face. "It's me." Mr. Okoye rushed around his desk and pulled his daughter into his arms. He held her tightly, crying with relief and joy. "I thought I'd lost you," he cried. "I thought I'd lost you, just like I lost your mother." "I'm here, father," Fortune said, crying as well. "I'm alive." They stood there for several minutes, just holding each other and crying. Finally, Mr. Okoye pulled back and looked at his daughter's face, as if to make sure she was real. "What happened to you?" he asked. "Where have you been?" Fortune explained everything. The attack in the alley, being thrown into the river, losing her memory, and living in the village with Matthew. As she spoke, Mr. Okoye's face changed from relief to anger. "Who did this to you?" he demanded. "Who tried to kill my daughter?" "It was Bianca," Fortune said. "She hired 2 men to kill me. One of them was David, her bodyguard." Mr. Okoye's face went white. "Bianca? My wife? No, that can't be true." "It is true, Father," Fortune said firmly. "I recognized David when his mask came off, and there's more. I think Bianca was also responsible for Mother's death, and for the death of Matthew's father." For the first time, Mr. Okoye noticed Matthew standing quietly in the corner of the office. "Who is this?" he asked. "This is Matthew," Fortune said. "He saved my life. He pulled me out of the river and took care of me until I got my memory back. Father, if it wasn't for him, I would be dead." Mr. Okoye walked over to Matthew and shook his hand hard. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for saving my daughter's life. I am forever in your debt." "I don't want your thanks," Matthew said simply. "I just want to help Fortune get justice." Just then, there was a knock on the office door. Mr. Okoye's secretary put her head in. "Excuse me, sir," she said. "There's someone here with a package from your wife." "Send them in," Mr. Okoye said. The door opened, and Daniel walked in carrying a wrapped package. When he saw Fortune, his face went pale. He dropped the package and tried to run, but Mr. Okoye's security guards were too quick. They grabbed him and dragged him back into the office. "Please," Daniel begged. "I didn't want to do it. She made me." "Who made you?" Mr. Okoye demanded. "Your wife, Bianca. She paid us to kill Fortune. She paid us to kill your first wife too. And she sent me here to deliver this bomb to kill you." One of the security guards carefully opened the package. Inside was a small device with a timer. A bomb set to go off in less than an hour. Mr. Okoye's face hardened with rage. He immediately called the police. When they arrived, Daniel confessed everything. He told them about Bianca's plan to kill Fortune, about how they had been told to mess with Elizabeth's car to cause the accident that killed her, and about the bomb meant for Mr. Okoye. "But why?" Mr. Okoye asked, his voice breaking. "Why would she do all this?" "Money," Daniel said simply. "She wanted to make sure her son inherited everything. She didn't want misfortune to have any claim to your wealth. And she couldn't get close to you while your first wife was alive, so she had her killed." The police took Daniel away and immediately sent officers to arrest Bianca. Mr. Okoye, Fortune, and Matthew went with them to the family home. When they arrived, Bianca was relaxing in the living room, completely unaware that her plan had been exposed. When she saw Fortune walk through the door with Mr. Okoye and the police, she jumped to her feet, her face draining of all color. "Fortune?" she stammered. "You're alive?" "Yes, I am," Fortune said coldly. "Thanks to your son, Matthew." "My son? Matthew?" Bianca looked confused. "Yes," Fortune continued, "the son you abandoned years ago in the village. The son you left with his father when you decided to come to the city and start over. The son whose father you murdered when he threatened to expose your crimes." Bianca's legs gave out, and she fell to the floor. "No," she whispered, "this can't be happening." Matthew stepped forward. Bianca looked up at him, and recognition slowly came into her eyes. "Matthew," she whispered. "My little boy." "I'm not your little boy," Matthew said coldly. "You abandoned me. You tried to kill me and my father. You're no mother of mine." Bianca began to beg. "Please, you have to understand. I was poor. I wanted a better life. I didn't mean for things to go this far." "You murdered my father," Matthew said, his voice shaking with emotion. "You murdered Fortune's mother. You tried to murder Fortune. And you tried to murder Mr. Okoye. How many people have to die for your greed?" The police moved to arrest Bianca, but she kept begging. "What about Oscar? What will he think when he finds out you've arrested his mother?" Mr. Okoye laughed bitterly. "Oscar? The son who isn't even mine?" "Yes, Bianca, I know. I did a DNA test when he was born. I knew he wasn't my biological child, but I raised him anyway, because I thought I needed a son. But now I realize that a daughter is just as valuable. Fortune will inherit everything." Bianca screamed as the police handcuffed her and led her away. "You'll regret this," she shouted. "All of you will regret this." After Bianca was taken away, there was a moment of silence in the house. Everyone was trying to process what had just happened. "I need to sit down," Mr. Okoye said weakly. He looked like he had aged 10 years in the past hour. The woman he had married, the woman he had trusted, had been a monster all along. Fortune and Matthew helped him to a chair. "I'm so sorry, Father," Fortune said. "I know this must be incredibly painful for you." "I should have seen it," Mr. Okoye said, shaking his head. "I should have known, but I was so lonely after your mother died, and Bianca seemed so kind and caring. I never suspected." "She fooled all of us," Fortune said gently. In the days that followed, the full truth of Bianca's crimes came to light. Daniel and David both testified against her, revealing all the details of her murderous plots. The case became national news, with reporters camping outside Mr. Okoye's house and company. Oscar came to see Mr. Okoye shortly after Bianca's arrest. He fell to his knees before the man who had raised him. "I'm so sorry," Oscar said, tears running down his face. "I had no idea what my mother was doing. Please believe me." Mr. Okoye looked at Oscar for a long moment. Despite everything, he felt sorry for the young man. Oscar had been a good son, and he wasn't responsible for his mother's crimes. "Stand up, Oscar," Mr. Okoye said gently. Oscar stood, and Mr. Okoye hugged him. "You are not responsible for your mother's actions. You may not be my biological son, but I raised you as my own. You will always be my son." Oscar cried with relief. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for not abandoning me." Mr. Okoye turned to Matthew. "And you," he said, "you are Bianca's son, which makes you Oscar's brother. I know you have every right to hate your mother and want nothing to do with her or her family. But I hope you can find it in your heart to accept Oscar as your brother. He's innocent in all of this." Matthew looked at Oscar, who was looking back at him with hope in his eyes. Despite everything, Matthew could see that Oscar was truly sorry and had played no part in Bianca's evil plans. "I don't blame you for what your mother did," Matthew said to Oscar. "Our mother," he corrected himself. "We're brothers, and I'd like to get to know you." Oscar smiled through his tears and hugged Matthew. "Thank you," he said. "Thank you for giving me a chance." Mr. Okoye offered Matthew a position in his company. "You saved my daughter's life," he said. "You deserve to be rewarded. I want you to work for me. I'll pay you well and give you opportunities to grow." Matthew was overwhelmed. "I don't know what to say," he admitted. "I'm just a simple fisherman." "You're much more than that," Mr. Okoye said. "You're a good man with a good heart, and you love my daughter. That's all that matters to me." Fortune smiled and took Matthew's hand. "Please say yes," she said. "I want you to stay here with me." Matthew looked at Fortune, then at Mr. Okoye, and finally at Oscar. He had come to the city expecting to seek revenge against the man he thought had killed his father. Instead, he had found a family. "Yes," he said, "I'll stay." In the weeks that followed, life slowly began to return to normal, or at least a new normal. Bianca was tried and sentenced to life in prison for multiple counts of murder and attempted murder. David and Daniel also got long prison sentences, though they were given some mercy for cooperating with the police. Fortune cut all ties with Mark and Amara. When they heard that Fortune was alive and had inherited her father's fortune, they tried to contact her, begging for forgiveness. But Fortune refused to see them. She had moved on, and she had no place in her life for people who had betrayed her so completely. Interestingly, Mark and Amara's story didn't end well. Without Fortune's money and connections, their expensive lifestyle quickly became impossible to keep up. Desperate to maintain their way of living, they turned to drug smuggling. They were eventually caught and arrested, sentenced to long prison terms. As for Alana, she eventually moved on with her life. She met and married a man from a neighboring village, someone who truly loved her. She and Matthew stayed polite when they occasionally saw each other, though they never became friends. Matthew and Fortune's relationship kept growing stronger. About 6 months after Fortune's return, Matthew proposed. He did it simply, without any big gestures. Just the two of them sitting by the river in his village, the place where their story had begun. "Fortune," he said, taking her hand, "you're the most amazing woman I've ever met. You're brave, you're kind, and you're beautiful inside and out. I love you more than I ever thought possible. Will you marry me?" "Of course I'll marry you," Fortune said, throwing her arms around him. "I love you, Matthew. I love you so much." Their wedding was a grand affair, attended by people from both the city and the village. It was a beautiful blend of two worlds coming together. Mr. Okoye walked Fortune down the aisle, tears of joy running down his face. Oscar stood beside Matthew as his best man, proud to support his brother. The ceremony was held in the village church, the same church where Matthew's father had been buried. It felt right, a celebration of new beginnings, in a place that held so many memories. After the wedding, Matthew and Fortune settled into their new life together. They split their time between the city and the village, with Matthew working in Mr. Okoye's company and helping to manage the business, while also keeping his fishing business in the village. Fortune discovered that she loved the simpler life in the village just as much as the sophisticated life in the city. She learned to fish alongside Matthew, and she became close friends with the village women who had once been suspicious of her. Mr. Okoye made Oscar a branch manager of his companies. Oscar proved to be an excellent businessman, and he and Matthew worked together harmoniously. The two brothers, who had grown up in such different circumstances, formed a close bond. As the years passed, Matthew and Fortune had 3 beautiful children, 2 daughters and a son. They raised their children with the values that had sustained them through their trials: courage, compassion, forgiveness, and the understanding that true wealth isn't measured in money, but in the love we share and the lives we touch. They taught their children about both worlds, the privilege and opportunities of the city, and the simple joys and hard work of village life. The children grew up understanding that family, love, and integrity were more important than wealth or status. Mr. Okoye lived long enough to see his grandchildren grow into fine young people. He loved them deeply, making up for all the time he had lost with Fortune. On his deathbed, surrounded by his family, he told Fortune, "I'm so proud of you, my daughter. You've overcome so much. You've forgiven when it would have been easier to hate. You've chosen love over bitterness. Your mother would be so proud of you." Fortune held her father's hand as he passed away peacefully. Though she grieved his loss deeply, she was grateful for the years they had together and for the wisdom he had given her. As for Bianca, she spent the rest of her days in prison, haunted by the choices she had made. She had wanted wealth and status so desperately that she had destroyed her soul in pursuit of them. She had lost everything: her freedom, her son's respect, and any chance of redemption. She sometimes wrote letters to Oscar and Matthew, begging for forgiveness and asking them to visit her. Oscar visited her once a year out of a sense of duty, but the visits were always brief and uncomfortable. Matthew never visited her. He had forgiven her in his heart, but he saw no need to maintain a relationship with the woman who had caused so much pain. Matthew and Fortune lived a long and happy life together. They built a legacy not just of wealth, but of kindness, integrity, and love. Their children grew up to be compassionate, successful adults who carried on the values their parents had taught them. When they grew old, Matthew and Fortune would often sit by the river in the village, holding hands and watching the sunset. They would talk about the night that had changed both their lives forever. The night Fortune had been thrown into the water and Matthew had jumped in to save her. That night of terror and tragedy had ultimately led to a lifetime of love and happiness. It had brought together 2 people from completely different worlds and created a family built on love, forgiveness, and resilience. And so Fortune and Matthew's story became a legend in both the city and the village. A story of how love can triumph over evil, how forgiveness can heal the deepest wounds, and how the most unexpected circumstances can lead to the greatest blessings. Olana was never heard from again. Matthew got married to Fortune, and they lived happily ever after with their beautiful children. If you enjoyed this story, I'm certain you'll enjoy the next one showing on your screen right now. Please click on the thumbnail to watch the next story. I'd appreciate your support. Like this video, share it with your family and friends, and subscribe to my channel. See you in my next story. Bye.